On Business Incorporated today, gold debuts on Egypt's Mercantile Exchange. Savannah Energy completes acquisition of Exxonmobil in Chad and Cameroon. And Ethiopia signs the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement in Kigali. Good afternoon. Welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Ini Jodmekwa. Well, let's start off the program with market numbers in Africa. We see that it's mostly negative in Africa. The NGX of Nigeria there in the red, 0.03. It's marginal, so hopefully it will recover before the close of trade if it doesn't go further in the red. And then in South Africa, it's positive, 0.04, also marginal, but at least staying there in the positive. The EJX 30 of Egypt is very deep in the red, almost 2%, 1.94%. Kenya closed on Friday in the green, 0.10%. We move over to the Middle East there, and what we see there is that major markets were negative at intraday. Let's start off with Abu Dhabi, 0.94% in the red at 10,155.09 points. Dubai also in the red, 0.23%. Not as deep as Saudi Arabia, but in the red anyhow. And then we move over to the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi there. Now, Saudi Arabia, there we see just about 10,000 points at 1.36%. Also in the red, all in the red in the Middle East today. Qatar also, that's where the World Cup is going on, but it doesn't seem to be favoring the market. It's also in the red, 0.71% at intraday. Now let's move over to Europe, and the conversation there is about a meeting. The EU agriculture ministers are meeting in Brussels to discuss the state of the food and fishing industries across the bloc. The gathering is taking place against the backdrop of Russia's war in Ukraine, which has caused major disruption to food supply chains and contributed to soaring energy prices. Well, to give us details on that meeting and what to expect, we have Kate Ferguson from DW in Berlin. Hi, Kate. Good afternoon. So what's on the agenda of this meeting?
So ministers will basically be looking at the state of farming and fishing across the bloc. There are about 10 million farmers in the EU, and the past few years have been really difficult for them. First, they've had to deal with the pandemic, when supply chain disruption and lockdowns really cut into their bottom line. And things were especially tough, of course, for farmers who sold most of their produce to the catering industry. Now we've got the energy crisis, which has been intensified by Russia's war in Ukraine, and that's caused the cost of fertilizer to soar. Another issue is weather conditions. They've been exacerbated by climate change, and they're making things hard as well. This past summer, farmers across the EU were hit by a severe drought, which caused crops to fail. The agricultural ministers will be talking about all of these issues and discussing ways to cushion the blow and to limit the impact that rising costs are having on consumers. They'll also be working to hammer out an agreement on fishing rights in both EU and non-EU waters.
Well, you talked about fertilizer there. How much impact is the war having on farmers individually?
So the war in Ukraine has really drawn attention to just how fragile global food chains can be. As we know, Ukraine is a key exporter of wheat. Some 90% of its exports went to Africa and Asia between 2016 and 2021. But when Russia blocked Black Sea ports, millions of tons of grain got stuck, and that left some of the most vulnerable parts of the world facing food shortages. The EU did respond, though. It set up solidarity lanes, which allowed produce to be transported via overland routes instead. Shipments of grain from Ukraine's Black Sea ports have since resumed thanks to a UN-brokered deal known as the Black Sea Grain Initiative. But ministers will be looking at the effectiveness of those measures and at what else needs to be done to protect food security in the most vulnerable parts of the world. They'll also be looking at how a common agricultural policy can strengthen food security at home.
So talking about this meeting, how are investors viewing it, and what reactions do we see from the markets?
So a deal on fishing rights and clarity on a unified policy for dealing with the challenges facing farmers, that would certainly go some way towards reassuring investors that the European agriculture industry is resilient. But looking ahead to this week, the European Central Bank is expected to raise borrowing rates further on Thursday. The decisions of that kind are also expected from the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England. They will be the main focus for investors this week as they figure out what way the wind is blowing when it comes to the economic outlook for the coming year.
All right, Kate, thank you so much for that. I'm sure we'll follow up on that meeting tomorrow during Business Incorporated. So let's move over to London now. Juliana joins us. Juliana, good afternoon. I must say this morning when you were speaking to Ladi, you had this week very busy for you, but Microsoft seems to be making it even busier. We hear Microsoft is buying 4% of stake in London Stock Exchange, and this is just a part of a multi-billion-pound deal. I wonder why they're going into this, but what else are we expecting from this deal?
Good afternoon, Innie. Yes, it's a very interesting strategic partnership, as David Schwimmer, the CEO of the London Stock Exchange Group, has said in a statement to investors this morning. And it seems as if investors are pretty cheered by this new strategic partnership because the LSEG Group shares were up about 4%. And it's a 4% stake that the US tech titan has purchased in the group. It's set them back about $1.5 billion. And really, it's to make the London Stock Exchange the world's leading global exchange, not just in markets, but also in data. You'll remember about this time last year, Innie, the group completed a $27 billion acquisition of Refinitiv from Thomson Reuters. And now the LSEG is just second to Bloomberg when it comes to data analytics across the world. And I think that's really where they want to go. They know that Microsoft obviously is one of the world's leading when it comes to data analytics and cloud storage systems. And that's really what this strategic deal is about. Very little in terms of context about what we can expect in the coming months and years. But we do know that the full acquisition is expected to be, well, the full stake partnership is expected to be complete by the first quarter of 2023.
All right, Juliana. And then this morning you talked about the weather, snow and all. How disruptive is that? Or is it just, is it passing by thing?
Well, it's incredibly disrupted, even though we typically get snow around this time of the year. Anytime it does come, you can expect delays and road closures, and that's exactly what's happened this morning. I've got to say, it is incredibly cold. I'm rubbing my hands together, trying to keep the warmth in. But there was heavy snowfall yesterday evening, and the Met Office has issued a yellow weather alert to commuters, basically advising them to stay home unless it's absolutely necessary. Yesterday, Heathrow Airport had to cancel about 50 flights, and that was because air traffic controllers were pretty worried about fog and ice on the runway. And this morning, Stansted Airport, which operates out of Essex, they've cancelled all flights. So not great if you were somebody that was looking to travel into Europe and onto a further destination. Airports are advising customers to please check before you make your way to the airport. And we're seeing similar scenes on the rail and on the roads. M25, which is known typically as London's biggest car park, was certainly a car park earlier today. Some drivers having to wait 8 hours. I don't think anyone can keep their engine on for 8 hours. So you can imagine just how cold they were. So that yellow weather alert is going to remain in place for Scotland, the southwest of England and London until at least 11 a.m. tomorrow. So even though it looks great, and I have been seeing lots of people take pictures outside, please be careful because, of course, once the snow turns hard, it is going to be icy and it is going to be incredibly dangerous. So please do stay safe out there.
Yeah, well, that's for our London viewers, Juliana. I mean, this is a lot of disruption. We have the unions disrupting the transportation. Now we have the weather. And, well, let's hope it doesn't get worse and the yellow doesn't turn red. I mean, the alert. But let's see the market. I hope it's not red there.
Red is the colour of the markets. I was discussing with Laddie this morning on Business Morning, Innie, that we got that official data for GDP from the Office for National Statistics for the month of October, showing that there was some respite, a 0.5% growth. But if you consider that it fell 0.6% and then 0.2% on the two previous months, it kind of is flat. That's not done too well for investors, particularly as we heard from the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt this morning, saying that he remains cautiously optimistic that some of the worst months are still to come. The Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey is forecasting that we are heading into the worst recession that we've had since the 2008 financial crisis. In fact, the Office for Budget Responsibility already seems that we may even be in a recession. Not great as we prepare for the run up to Christmas. So if we have a look at the numbers, and at intraday, the all share is down 0.21%, the FTSE 100 down 2 at 0.11%, and the FTSE 250, that domestic market, it's down 0.81%. In the currencies market, though, the British pound is continuing its rally against the US dollar. It's up by 0.40%. The British pound is also up against the euro by 0.04% and up too against the Japanese yen by 0.41% at intraday, Innie.
All right, Juliana, thank you so much for those market numbers and the updates. And do stay warm and safe out there as you commute back home today.
Thank you.
All right, staying with the numbers in the market now, shares in Asia Pacific declined on Monday as investors looked ahead to a Fed meeting and U.S. inflation data. This week, it's a data-filled week. There you have the numbers there. Nikkei 225 is down 0.21% at 27,842.33. Shanghai Composite also down. It's a red market, even in Asia today. 3,179.04. That's about more than 0.5%, and the Hang Seng Index is also down 2.2% at 19,463. South Korean benchmark Kospi closed down also 0.67%. Kosdaq dipped 0.59%. MSCI broad index of Australia was also down. Mainland China Shanghai Composite closed at 3,179.04. and it was also down 0.63%. Shenzhen Composite down also almost 7%, almost 0.7%. A red market there. U.S. stock features fractionally higher earlier Monday ahead of a week with several anticipated events in the ongoing fight against inflation. And the numbers there, the features, these are the features for the United States in the green for a change, different from what's going on in Asia. Dow Jones up 0.16%, S&P 500 also up 0.21%, NASDAQ also up 0.27%. These are the features. Well, the move in features comes as investors will be focusing on inflation. This week on Tuesday, the November consumer price as the CPI will be released, and traders will be looking for a sign that inflation is slowing. The Federal Reserve has a two-day meeting which begins on the same day. The central bank is expected to announce another rate hike on Wednesday, though traders are anticipating a smaller move than in recent months. Oil prices fell on Monday, deepening a multi-week decline as the weakening global economy offset supply woes stemming from the closure of a key pipeline supplying the United States and Russian threats of a production cut. Brent futures was down 38 cents at $75.72 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $70.76, down 26 cents, and that's about 0.3%. Last week, Brent and WTI fell to their lowest since December 2021. Let's take a breather now. When we come back, we do have a lot of stories for you from the African scene, especially celebrating with Kenya. Kenya is 59 years today, celebrating its independence. We'll have a conversation on that and some other stories from the African continent. So stay with us. This is Business Incorporated on Channels Television. You're welcome back to Business Incorporated here in Channels Television. We'll start off in Egypt, where the advisor to the Minister of Supply and Internal Trade for Gold Affairs, Nagi Farag, has revealed that the yellow metal will be listed this December on the Egyptian Mercantile Exchange. On the sidelines of the opening of the Naval Expo for Gold and Jewelry, Farag said that the current gold price is exaggerated as a result of the actions of some merchants, but it is likely to decline and stabilize. Farage added that determining the price of gold on EMX will take place according to certain parameters and frameworks. Egypt aims to expand the export of the yellow metal, especially that it will contribute to increasing US dollar revenues during the coming period in light of the increasing global demand for gold. Let's go to Kenya now, where we're celebrating 59 years of independence. That's what's going on in Kenya. Last week, the inflation was out and unexpectedly slowed for the first time in 9 months. Annual inflation fell to 9.5%, and it was on lower gas, food prices. In June, however, a weakened shilling cost Kenyan an extra 5.4 billion shillings in external debt servicing. So it's not all good. Kenya's foreign exchange reserve has also been shrinking, partly because of repayment of bilateral and commercial lenders and the central bank's intervention to try and slow the shilling's depreciation against the dollar. Now let's have economist Limo Taboy joining us now to give us a wider picture of the celebrations going on there in Kenya and the true state of the economy, at least from his eyes. Good afternoon, Mr. Taboy. Congratulations. Happy independence today.
Good afternoon, Ini. On behalf of Kenyans, thank you for your wishes this Jamhuri Day.
So tell us, how's the celebration there? Is it bright? Is it quiet? Is it exciting? Are the economic headwinds, are they catching up with the celebration?
Well, the economy is the top story still. We've just 3 months passed since the last election, and the president has now been here, our 5th president. He's just marked his third month in office. And he gave a speech today after military celebrations. And I think there were 3 broad things. One was about food security, which ties in with the high cost of food. You just mentioned the shilling. And then second is about opportunities for people in terms of, especially young people, digital employment. It's a key thing for the future. And the third item he mentioned was about enabling more people to access affordable credit for the future.
So outside this speech, how is the reception of it? Because sometimes the government could be talking, but they seem not connected to the people. How is the reception? How hopeful are the people, are Kenyans, to this speech and promises?
It depends on which side you talk to, but for the most part, the government has the narrative now. There is a new fund which they launched, and they talk about the stats of the borrowers who have registered. It's a new fund. It's only been out for 1 month. And what they're trying to do is to help young people rebuild their credit. That is something which was a point during the campaigns. And the other one is the high cost of food inflation. So the high cost of food prices, which this government has set about to target, to lower through subsidies to the farmers, unlike the previous government, which had subsidies right at the supermarket shelves. So as part of the ongoing government programs, discussions with the IMF, the new government wants to shift the subsidy back to the farmers and to have lower costs of production from next year.
So we've talked about depreciating shillings. We've talked about debt servicing increasing, especially as the dollar soars. How much of this fits into everyday life for Kenyans?
For the exporters and manufacturers, the shilling is a concern for them. It's getting weaker every day. And in terms of importers, they see the cost of imports going up. But it's really, there's an ongoing discussion with the IMF, which we've not yet got to the outcome of which. And I think it's expected that when that is done, the central bank will be able to now access more credit and raise the import cover back to above 4 months, which is kind of a red line, which they have always been worried about.
All right,
it's been 7 months in previous years, and they want to get it back up to above 4%. 4 months of import cover.
So let's get your personal perspective. You're an economist. You live in Kenya. You see the realities of a time. Let's say when Kenya is celebrating 60 years, where do you see the economy at, compared to where you are today?
Certainly, the cost of food has to come down for everybody. Then there are other initiatives which they want to target, which are to lower the cost of energy. And this is towards, so for manufacturers, we are seeing challenges about Kenyan goods not being as competitive in the region, and also cost of food production being higher because of fertilizer and energy prices. But if these can come down, I think it will make things much more competitive for everybody. We all buy in supermarkets, at least in Nairobi, so we're able to see when the price of something goes up and goes down. And certainly we want to go back to the supermarket and where you hand your banknote and you get a lot more goods for the same note than it is currently.
Well, it doesn't sound so happy, but I mean, I guess we just have to keep pushing on here in Africa, and hopefully leaders will get the right steps, to deal with this global headwinds, which of course feeds in from not just Africa, but other parts of the world. Thank you so much. And once again, congratulations on your 59th independence anniversary in the country.
Thank you, Ini. Good day.
All right, so let's move on to other issues now. Savannah Energy has completed its acquisition of Exxonmobil's assets in Chad and Cameroon, while launching a new deal to acquire Petronas' interest in South Sudan. Following the Exxonmobil deal, Savannah now has 40% stake in Doba oil project and an equal stake in the Chad-Cameroon pipeline system. Production at Doba this year is 28,000 barrels per day gross, while the pipeline has capacity of 124,000 barrels per day. Savannah spent $407 million to acquire the ExxonMobil asset. It has announced that it would spend up to $1.25 billion to acquire Petronas South Sudan stakes. Savannah will publish a new admission document in early 2023. Savannah struck a deal a year ago to buy Petronas stake in Chad and Cameroon. This has not yet completed, and the company would not comment further on the deal. In Ethiopia, the country has signed the African Continental Free Trade Area, that's the AfCFTA agreement in Kigali on a historic day. Exactly a year to the day on March 21st, the Ethiopian Parliament, the House of People's Representatives, ratified the AfCFTA agreement, a significant landmark in the long history of the country. Unlike a vast majority of African countries, Ethiopia is neither a member of the World Trade Organization nor full participant in the Trade Liberation Initiative within the continent through regional economic communities. In appreciation of this fact, ECA has been committed to ensuring Ethiopia gets all the technical support it needs to succeed in the area. Harnessing the full benefits of AfCFTA starts with its domestication, making the agreement accessible in the local language, facilitates domestic policy processes, and brings the AfCFTA closer to the people. In this context, the United Nations Commission for Africa, the ECA, with the leadership of the Ministry of Trade and Regional Integration of Ethiopia and financial support from the European Union, will launch the Amharic translation of the agreement. That's it for the episode today. It's Monday's episode of Business Incorporated. There's Tuesday, there's Wednesday, up until Friday. So let's do it again tomorrow. I'm John Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day.